if you really boil a lot of these questions down, I think that they're questions that we all ask when we start in the business, and they're kind of like, will I be all right, and where do I start, and where will I go, and all that stuff. And can we talk about those feelings about when you guys started in the business, and how that, I guess the question is, if you was a time machine and you could go back to when you first started in the business, what do you wish you could tell yourself? Is that too big? Wow.
Wow. Yeah. What would I tell myself? I don't know. I don't look back on. I think when I started, I think like a lot of college students, I went to Columbia College here way back, and wanted to be in production, and wanted first editing, and then I took a cinematography class and fell in love with cameras, and decided, okay, I'm going to camera work. And I did a little bit of assisting for a few years and decided, I don't like production. So I decided, all right, I still want to be around cameras and I still want to be with gear, and the rental house was a perfect fit. And I've had a lot of opportunities since then within Panavision, being a global company and a manufacturer of gear as well as a provider of equipment, to really just have a lot of fun and still be passionate about the work that I do. And so I think, for me, obviously everybody else here is in production, but I think it's also something to sort of think about, because when you're in college, they're not teaching you about, here's Rental House 101 class, because there isn't that, or there isn't Distribution 101, or maybe there is these days, I don't know, but there's a lot of opportunity out there outside of production. Even at the studios in LA, I had a lot of friends that worked at studio operations as opposed to studio production. So, I guess if I went back and to tell myself, it would be learn a little bit more about the business of the business, because it took me a while to work that, because you concentrate so much on the creative.
Yeah, and I think it's a double-edged sword, this idea that there's so many different paths. Sure. And so I guess I would say the good part of so many different paths and options is that you can find your path, that there's not just one, which is awesome.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Any answer to that goofy question?
I feel like I'm still making the mistakes that maybe later I'll be like, probably shouldn't have done that. I haven't
I'm
been
still
in this.
making mistakes.
Right. But I feel like I haven't been in this business long enough to be like, I really should have, thought about this differently, because I'm just running, taking as many gigs as I can, trying to be more selective, but that's kind of how I've gotten where I am, because I just haven't stopped since I at least was out of school.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of goes back to, there's so many paths that I think sometimes people, I'm always afraid of pigeonholing myself, because I want to learn things. It's not I just want to do one thing. But I do know a lot of people who are kind of my peers that they're kind of finding that they are pigeonholing themselves a lot, and being able to make a lot of friends and just be creatively interested in a lot of things is a great way to make new friends, but also figure out what you want to do, what you like. But yeah.
I'll throw in, I see where I held back, where I could have been much more proactive, and I was my own worst enemy, Yeah. I let somebody's side comment affect me, and how stupid was that? And then you see, I'll use the example of the guys, they were all guys, they didn't care, they just marched forward, well, of course I'm going to go do this. You're not going to stop me, I'm going to go do this. And I would get just sidetracked by that, and I'd end up sitting at home thinking about it, and they were out doing stuff. And you would just, all those opportunities, you could have just try, just try. And, there was the other piece of interacting more with people. Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Going to events like this. They were fewer and farther between, but there were associations you could have interacted with. Men, male, female, it didn't matter. All those things, you were it took no energy, it took no effort. Or you'd get hung up on by people, hey, I'm looking for work. no, we don't need anybody. Click, and you, oh, well, nobody needs any work. Call the next person. How many times did you get stopped by stupid, your personality was your own worst enemy?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I got to tell you, Janice has done some amazing things, and she was doing stuff way before anybody else, any other women in Chicago were doing stuff, and she was in a field that nobody was, you know, it was rare that anybody did Steadicam, much less a female Steadicam operator, and Steadicam operators are known for like their strength, and it's a very, very male-oriented job, and this was, you know, this wasn't yesterday. I mean, this was, how many years you've been doing this?
30 plus.
Yeah, as long as I've known you, and you know, and it's amazing that you say that you know that you said no and all this stuff, because I'm just like, when I look back at what you've done, I'm like, my God.
Yeah, but I look at all those opportunities you missed. But yeah, I was kind of too stupid to not try. You know, I was oblivious, which was good, but at other levels, you're like, wow, perspective now. Now I see things I could have done differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the hardest thing in the film business. You know, it was this odd device, nobody knew what to do with it. It was in its infancy, and it was all guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say this, and I don't know, may be accurate, it may be not, but I used to struggle when I first started out, and I would think, God, this business, you know, it's too hard, it's too this, it's too that, I really should leave it. And then I would realize finally that all the problems I had with the film business were actually problems that I had with myself. Yeah. That it was all my own weaknesses that were coming back to get me. And it is a hard business, and your weaknesses are, you know, they do trip you up. But I think that what I realized was that my weaknesses and the things that I'm not good at were going to follow me anyway. Those problems were going to follow me anyway, no matter what I did, and that I should just pursue what I wanted to do and try to, you know, use my strengths to help me and then work on my weaknesses.
And the business has a way of making you either a little bit or a lot paranoid, because you look for feedback, like, did I do a good job? And people don't necessarily give it to you. And now it's the whisper. You have no idea what's going on in the headsets. You're like, are they looking for a replacement? Did they call somebody? You know, did they hate me? You know, whatever. And you know, especially women, all stereotype women, seem to be sensitive to that kind of stuff. And, or at least I was. And you'd amplify that. And you were like, don't amplify it. Just go to work. Put your head down and go to work.
That's true. I remember I was the first on a show. And it was a TV show, and every morning I'd walk by the producer deliberately, because I figured if this is the morning I get fired, I'd rather know it now rather than later, because I thought I was going to get fired every day.
Yeah.
That's how scared I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's certainly better now, so it is better now.
Yeah. Shuling, what do you got?
Yeah,
What were you thinking?
I think back to 2010 when I was an intern at Cartemquin, and I really, really wanted to be on set. I mean, we didn't really get many opportunities to do that. So there was one day an email came through to the 5 interns, and it was Maria Finizzo, a very experienced documentary filmmaker, looking for someone to help run the crowdfunding campaign for her new film In the Game. And I was like, ooh, me. And then when she was like, okay, you can do it. And I'm like, all right, now I have to figure out how to run a crowdfunding campaign. Right, and then from there you kind of observe how the team works, and then I noticed that Maria and the producer Mary weren't doing anything much in terms of social media. So I was like, hey, do you need help there? And then they were like, yeah, you can do that. And then later on I'm like, hey, that looks like a big shoot. Do you need a second camera? And then they were like, yeah, come on set. So little by little you kind of watch what's needed and then offer it, and then that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. Today, I'm really lucky to be able to be back on another of Maria's movies, doing sound. So one of the biggest lessons I take from that is this is very much a seed planting industry, where you have to plant it and then water it slowly, and it'll take time before things sprout, but trust that it will if you keep at it.
I think that's a really good point. I think even from my perspective on what I do, when I was out in LA at Panavision, it was corporate headquarters, there was a lot of opportunity out there. And I found that I got into roles by saying something about where I saw a gap. Like, why aren't we doing this? And then be like, oh, you do that. And I'm like, well, no, I was just asking the question. But then I do it and I take it on, and I think it helps you grow. It also helps put you in, you know, people's minds of like, hey, that's a person that gets things done. And on production, I mean, it's a little different on big union production. You have to be careful with what you do. But if you're the person on set that really, you know, no matter what your role, if you see where there's a gap or something that needs assistance, and you know either who to ask about that or that you can help do that, that's going to get you far. To be assertive, but also, you know, be kind about it and be mindful about what you're doing and whose role it may affect. But certainly what you're saying of saying, hey, if I can help you there. I mean, I look at that for employees that I have over the years as somebody that really, you know, goes, hey, I could do this for us, or I could do that. You know, that goes a long way. It really does.
I was discussing this, we were doing, you know, I was saying I was going to do this panel, and somebody told a story where they were a camera person, and they went to their case, and someone had put like a centerfold picture, a naked woman on their case, and they were kind of taken aback by that. And, you know, I thought to myself, well, what do you do in that situation? There's a certain testing or hazing process sometimes on crews, and so it's sometimes hard to figure out. It's almost like if they don't tease you, it means they don't like you. It's almost like the teasing means they like you. It's really complicated, and so I guess I was thinking, like, how do you know how do you navigate the culture, and when do you stop navigating it and start to change it, and how do you change it, and how do you confront your coworkers and say, look, you know what, that's not cool,
right?
You know. And so what are your thoughts on that issue? Hannah, what do you got?
I mean, I think a lot of my like confidence on set comes from like the trust in my ability to, like, the reason I'm there is because of something. And like I definitely deal with that a lot, where the teasing thing is like real, but it's also like, if like one job isn't forever, so you also have to like be like, okay, what are you getting out of this? And also like, can it help your career? Not like dealing with things and then like if some like really terrible sexism's happening, I'd hope that, you know, that would be resolved. But like also, yeah, like if you're on set, you're usually really good at your job. And so remembering that to then help you be confident in weird positions with other people, I think has helped me a lot, because it's like, if someone teases me, I'll tease them back, because I'm like, we're both kind of here for the same reason, and like I'm not less than just because of like my age or my gender. Like I'm here for a job, for a purpose. But
I think on that point, you kind of got to go with your gut. I mean, there's a kind of fine line sometimes on set between what somebody might classify as sexual harassment or harassment versus I'm just giving you crap and teasing you. And just, you know, I think these days everybody's much more aware of where the difference is, but I think you have to go with your gut too, because you certainly don't want to let it go if it's truly harassment, because then you're just feeding it, and the person that's doing it's going to do it to the next one, so stop. But if it's just teasing, which they all do, and that crap with pictures and other, you know, hopefully that doesn't go on as much anymore, but it did.
I don't know.
yeah, I read
before.
something in college about, I was reading like this one like females like behind the camera book, and I read this story about a female DP on an all-male crew, and it was like this awesome show, and they went to lunch and she came back and all of her meters were smashed, like on the Pee-wee dolly. She like found all of her meters. And like that sticks with me clearly because it's like terrible, but also that is something that like happened in like contemporary history. Like that wasn't, you know, film has only been around for so long, and that was like, you know, only maybe like what, 40 years ago that something like that happened. So
I mean,
Well,
I think
40 years ago was,
the thing to do would be to turn that on its head to yourself and say, wow, they must really fear me. I must be awesome.
right.
power play.
Back to your question, I go with it's flirting until you tell them to knock it off and they don't.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And then it, you know, look, I've told you it's crossed a line, maybe not with somebody else, crossed a line with me. And then you go, you know, if they don't, then you figure out a plan. You figure out, do I talk to somebody higher up that calls them on it? And the person you tell it to may misread it, and they may still fire you, okay?
Yeah.
But that's the choice, or one of the options. But if it happens, you probably didn't want to be there anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, start with what does it cross the line of? And I know lots of people that have found their forever spouses on sets. So it's not a bad thing. That is not bad. Now in today's world, they expect a diverse workforce. And most of I'll say the guys want women, minorities, everybody on a set. They do not want just that. It's an ancient story, but The Thing, Kurt Russell, right? They were doing The Thing. And they said, well, what was the hardest movie you ever worked on? And he said, that movie, he said, it was because we were all in the Arctic shooting for months. And he said it was all guys. He said it was the worst production ever. There were absolutely no women around. And the guys were just tired of seeing other guys. And that was in the 80s. So there is an incentive for men, they want women, minorities, folks around.
Yeah. Well, I think diversity in all aspects of the business has come to light a lot in the last 5-10 years. I mean, even with the Motion Picture Academy and looking at, what it means to really bring in people from, whether it's women or people of color, and have that diversity there. I think it's important, not just in the storytelling, but in the jobs that we do.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Ava DuVernay, the director, she said something that really keyed in to something. I like the way she put it. She goes, there's something about the word diversity she didn't like. She said, I like the word inclusion. And I think that for me, it made it click, like, oh, I get it. It's not just like diversity, like we have to get one person here and this person and one of each type or some weird like metric that nobody really knows, but it's about inclusion. It's about allowing other voices to be heard, including people rather than excluding them or having one type. So, yeah. Okay.
What was the original question?
God only knows, right? What was the original question?
Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
I don't know.
No,
Okay. How about being a leader on set and how to do that with, and you guys maybe, can speak to the way it is now, and have you had a problem with taking control, or do you not let it worry you? And then, us being in the business longer can talk to, if they've seen change, if it changed since you first started. So what do you think?
I haven't faced any issues leading teams before. I think if you can show, I'll give the example. I was sound recordist on a set, and then I had boom operators to manage. And I think if you make it clear that you have their interests at heart, that I want to make sure that you take something away from working on this film, just like I do, when they know that you care, I think they'll respect that and not give you as many problems. I mean, I'm very non-confrontational, so I have experienced, teasing before, but when that happens, I just try to use my skills and my attitude to show that I'm worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, so much of why I like the film industry and I like being a DP is because I like delegating and working with people and being able to lead a team, but also work with a bunch of different people and help make something together. But I think that honestly, in college, I didn't get a lot of opportunities to shoot things until later on, and because I just tried, and then I finally got a few opportunities my last semester of school and just shot as much as I could. But a lot of where I kind of found my footing was starting this women in film group, and also taking an oral history class, being able to actually talk in front of people. But also it gets to a point where it's if you know what you're talking about, you can talk about it in front of anyone. And that I kind of took all of that, and then when I'm on set, if I can communicate with people way clearer because I just kind of found my footing in doing that, and it's awesome. I've never really felt threatened by people on set, I guess, unless I'm with someone who is like really good at their job, but you can also learn from those people. And even like when you make a mistake on set, you can learn from that too. There's like so much like, I mean, unless someone's like safety or something goes wrong in that realm, that really sucks. But like literally any other mistake or any other situation, like good or bad, like you learn from it and take all of that knowledge to the next thing you work on. But, yeah.
I mean, I think I saw kind of sexism in this way that I was the first assistant and I had a second assistant. And there'd be a problem on set where the DP would be like, well, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And I would say, well, you know, if we put the Ubangi on and put the camera up over the table, then we could point it straight down, you know, whatever, I'd have an answer. And everybody would keep going on and keep going on. And then my second assistant, who was a guy, would go, you know, I think if you get a Ubangi and put the camera out over the table and point it straight down, and they'd go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And he would look back at me and smile, and I'd just be like, oh my God. And that's where I saw it. And so you know, you can't really confront that stuff, but it just gets tiresome.
It's true, yeah. I mean, I remember one story I can share without saying names. When I was in a role out in LA in Panavision, I was their 3D product manager. And, you know, 4 or 5 years ago in the heyday of 3D capture, it was nuts. It was kind of the Wild West. I mean, with the rigs and the cameras, and, you know, you were pretty much engineering stuff during the prep. And I remember one DP, A-list DP, big features. He wanted to do his next movie in 3D, but I want to do it 3D film. And I'm like, what? I go, you do understand the whole reason 3D is making a comeback is digital. Smaller cameras, digital signal, easier than, you know, gate weave, everything. I got the hand. I got the, look, Missy,
wow.
You shut up. And I was like,
wow.
All right. So post-production supervisor was not there. And all I remember saying was, all right, I'm just going to say one more thing. Please talk to your post-supervisor. Right? So, you know, shut up. I got told shut up. And I was like, okay, I'll shut up. And then the marketing rep looks at me and is like, shut up. And I'm like, fine, I'll shut up. So they spent a couple $100,000 on working for no, this wasn't even, that was just to pay us to design the rig to put the Millenniums on. You know, this thing was
God, it had to be 300 pounds.
Yeah, it was nuts. Anyway, they go through this whole thing for like a month and a half. They're getting closer to production. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, they call and they're like, the post supervisor was like, what the are you thinking? We're not going to shoot film. Do you know what it'll cost us in post? Because it was a special effects film. It was a big film. And I just sat there and I'm like, But I didn't. I was just like, you shut up and you go, okay, you're the client. We're going to do whatever we have to do. Because that is one thing, you know, Panavision's known for is it's like, all right. But I'm like, okay, so where do we draw the line in defying the law of physics versus reality of, like, okay. Anyway, it was shot on film 2D, and then they post 3D'd it. But I won't say what it was. It was a pretty good film. And he's a great DP, but boy, I had never gotten the hand before. I was like, whoa, I got the hand. So, and I don't know if I would have got that if I was. I don't know, you know, and I don't think about that really. I just think about what I do. I mean, I remember one time years ago when I was running a different rental house, and I had like 9 employees, and they just all happened to be guys. And I think it was my sister or somebody came in to visit me at work, and they're like, hey, you work with a bunch of guys. And I'm like, oh yeah, I do. I don't know, I don't really think about it. It's like, you do.
Yeah, I don't think we can.
And if it's women, it's women. If it's guys, it's guys. As long as everybody knows, you know, they're doing their job and they're doing it well, and people are getting along. I think that's what counts.
Part of what I've noticed, and I have to say I've only noticed it in recent years. In times when you're working in the trenches, you kind of pass it up, but you'll go, hey, I need the cables run differently on this setup because we're doing this. And they'll just do it the way they did it. Mm-hmm. Always did it the way, and you're like, did I not say the words? And but they're not jeopardizing their setup and time and efficiency for you until somebody makes them. And right now, if it's, let's say, the first AC, they do it their way because they're not putting their butts on the line for you, a day player or an occasional or whatever. And until, even if you prove it, okay, you might need to go, but you're going to have to prove it to them. And even stuff, just literally this week, I had some guys were doing stuff, and they just relentlessly wanted to carry ladders in various hallways and do things. And I'm like, why don't we just make a special trip with the ladder, get that out of the way, and then take all the other stuff? And the guy, I did not exist. And you're like, okay, go for it, you know. But usually women are like, well, okay, I'll, you know, and again, stereotyping, but, you know, there's an acknowledgement of you said something.
I know.
What?
And the guys are like, I've got a mission and this is the way I'm going to do it. From loading trucks to, and that's the, not frustrating, but I'll use the term frustrating, experience. And at some point you just have to either let it go or make peace with your own self going, okay, at some point they'll get it, or
they won't.
maybe their way is the best way, but am I invisible? You know, just to be, you know, again, inclusive. That was a fine idea. We'll go with our way. Would that hurt? So anyway, I find that amazing. But yeah, it takes an act of Congress to get some guys to change their setup.
Well, I was going to say too,
Gotta
I
be
think
flexible.
that, you know, we don't really think about it so much. I don't think that we're women in the business. You know, I think and I would just say that the thing I've tried to do is control the things I can control. I can't control what people think of me on some level. I can't control the way they act or whatever, but I can control what I do. I can control my attitude. I can control being early on set and having a great attitude and really studying my craft so that I feel like I am doing it, like I know what I'm doing, and I technically, you know, try to grow, you know, and challenge myself. And so that's the stuff I can control, and so that's what I do.
Right.
I guess a lot of, I don't think that we should be thinking about things as like, this is how we need to deal with like men on set. It's like, no,
Right.
like we need to start, like the better environments we create on set, the less that will happen later in life. Because I feel like the stories you guys are mentioning are like older, middle-aged white men. And like
They're
like,
the problem.
right. But if we are in places of power, we should create that inclusive environment where their voice isn't the voice, you know. And that's like part of like, that's how I see being like a woman in film. It's like, great, well then I'm gonna hire these people and I'm gonna hear from these stories or these, you know, like queer people of color stories, and then hopefully, you know, however many years from now, like Hollywood will look like that, you know. That's what my hope is.
I think it's starting to.
Yeah.
I think to your point, I mean, everything grows and changes, you know, over the years, and obviously we've been in it a lot longer, so we've seen that shift, and I think it's, you know, now, just from my little world of seeing people come in for preps and seeing the inclusiveness or the diversity of people that come in, it's just the norm now, which is phenomenal. And it's like, we don't have to, you know, hopefully have those discussions. Because it is what it is, you know, in a lot of fields, not just our field.
Yeah.
But
The thing that struck me not very long ago was, it never occurred to me, but I saw it a million times, is guys will beat the crap out of each other on a set, you know, and razzing each other, antagonistic, whatever, and they'll go out for a beer at the end of the day. And women, well, she was terrible to me, and we hold a grudge. It's a different brain chemistry. And it's slightly different now, but there is that, you know, that person was, you know, and we keep a list, right? It does happen. So if you think about it, there are allowances for, you know, the guys beating the crap out of you. Figure out a way to make that brain chemistry switch, because it's kind of a healthier way to go. You know, you can razz each other, you can be evil, you can be nasty, you can do all those things. In the end of the day, it's gone, and they're out having a beer, and it's hey, wasn't that show great? And I'm like, God, you guys killed each other. And now, you know, 3 months later, it's like, oh, that was the coolest show ever. You know, selective memory also comes in. So adopt selective memory.
Well, another question that people wanted to ask too was, how does being a woman help you, do you think, in this business? Does it help you? What do you think?
I think the last 3 projects that I was hired on was because I was a woman. Well, I am a woman. Well, it's because of the subject matters of the projects, right? So one is a film about female sexuality. The other is a film about breast cancer survivor. So in those situations, I think they were looking for a female crew person to be on there. Same goes with the other minorities too. So I got a DP job filming in a community of Muslim, a primarily Muslim community, and they were looking for a woman of color to come in because, I don't know, I guess I'm non-threatening or something. So I don't know, it's helped recently. Yeah.
Okay. You guys, anything?
Steadicam was so new, and there were so few people doing it. It was kind of an asset to do this thing that was a specialty. Back in the day, kind of unless you worked on features, which were gray-haired 50-year-olds that worked on features, it wasn't necessarily 20-year-olds. There were a handful of guys that owned $50,000 Betacams and a small lighting package, and they would work all the time. And they would make quite a lot of money a day. There was no way I was going to come up with $80,000. And you had to cost that out and turn it over and make $150 in 3 or 4 years, which meant you worked your tail off trying to pay off that package. Okay, and those were the niches back then. There was no way I was going to get into that niche, even if I had the equipment. The fact that I had equipment that would take anybody's camera, and suddenly everybody started to want to move a camera, there were, in the earliest days of Steadicam, a handful of names, and we all knew each other by first names. So in an odd way, it was the perfect niche, even because it was hard, but it's the woman that does that, and everybody knew Janice. So inadvertently, it worked for me, which now, if you, as a tip, you can be a specialist in the tiniest niche. I know all the menu drop-downs on an Alexa from memory. And at some point on a prep, somebody's going to go, how do you change the frame rate? And if over in the corner a voice goes, will you do this on a third? Everybody notices, and suddenly it's the tiniest little niche expert thing. You know, it's the goofiest stuff. So now the opportunities are huge for just niche. Find that person. And again, at preps, there's always somebody that knows something. I know that dolly, and they know it inside out and backwards. And that's the guy, girl that knows it. So that's where you kind of can stand out. And again, they don't care what suit you come in today. They're just as likely to listen. Contrary to some of our stories, now they really don't care. You can do that? Great. You can set a light? Go get it. Before it was, is she strong enough? Stuff.
Yeah. Well, that was a misconception about Steadicam.
Yeah.
You had to be strong.
Yeah.
And it was balance.
Yeah. And, along the way you got strong.
Right.
Yeah. You started working enough, and then you got strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question, you made me think of it, which is, what are the attributes that make someone successful in this business? What are the things that you see over and over again, kind of personality traits, or the things that people do that make them succeed?
I would have to say people that are assertive, but they're also kind, and they're respectful. Most of the people I know that are really very successful and have made it is, though, I would say those traits of being respectful. But still, you got to have a strong personality and to really work your way up and get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to respect people along the way too.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was Joe Schumacher, and you guys don't know, but years ago when I first started with him, he told me, he said, you know, he was a DP director in town and then had a small rental house for a while before he passed on. And first thing he told me when he hired me is, he's like, you have to be kind to every PA that walks in this door, you have to treat them like you would treat the director of a film. And you would do that. And lo and behold, I remember one day George Tillman walked in and he was PAing.
Oh my God.
And he had stayed up all night, you know, doing whatever. He was PAing on a commercial, and we got yakking, and you know, lo and behold, yeah, George directing big films and doing really well. That's awesome. Talented guy. But that always stuck with me, because I was like, you have to respect, because everybody's just trying to do it and work it out and get where they can be. And you don't know what their day is. You don't know what happened to them before you see them. So just respect that. So that's I don't know if I live that, but I try.
We can only try.
I would say like anticipation has like proven to be like the best skill, because it's like, even recently I've had some friends of mine who don't really work in film, and they've like displayed some interest. And I've had them on like really small things where like I'm doing everything and I just want to see how they help me. And there's certain people who like, they'll go and like fix the costume without me asking. And I'm like, yeah, like that was messed up. And like, I wasn't going to do that because I'm literally doing everything. But being able to, you know, assert yourself in a way where it's like you are looking at the full picture and you just want to be helpful. Like that is really what's going to get you where you want to be, is if you're like interested and you want to learn, but also you're kind of unafraid to like, you know, be like, oh, well, you know, you saying if you had an idea like on set and someone might ignore you, but like just being like present and being like attentive and actually like paying attention. And if you have a good idea, like sometimes that's noticed. Or if you are like, oh, I'm down to learn that, people are like, oh, cool. And they could teach you that, and then you could do that for the rest of your life. Like you could fall into some weird job. But yeah, anticipating is like really important.
On the heels of that, problem solving, you get off on problem solving, like, because you're standing in the background, you're gripping, and you're like, wow, that's how they hung that, okay. Boy, they could have hung it another way, and you get to armchair quarterback to keep yourself engaged. But it's also fun because at some point it's going to come up. You know, you got to hang a light over a table or some crazy something. But the adapting, adapt on a moment's notice, because every day it literally is, you know, visions of what you've done a million times, but there's always some twist. The actress can't be in the room for more than 10 minutes or something, and it's got to happen. But it also goes to the business side of it. You got to be happy with the ups and downs of not working or working, and keep yourself sane in the dead times, and deal with taxes on your own, and deal with the business side of it. Well, you know, well, do I deduct my car? Do I deduct? Because at some point that's going to come up too. And some people love the business, but don't want to freelance. Yeah, yeah. And there's a certain kind of person. You also are, you're off on a Tuesday, and nobody else in your world is off on a Tuesday. And your friends, your circle of friends, hey, you want to do your laundry on Saturday? And you're like, well, I did mine on Tuesday. It's a different world, you know, and your perspectives are different. And suddenly you start having different friends because your perspectives, I just spent 3 weeks off. They're like, did you have a vacation? No, I didn't have any income, so I don't have any money right now.
Yeah.
You know, and bankrolling enough to keep it. You know, I worked a ton in the summer. I cannot go to Cancun. I got to save it because January in Chicago is terrible typically. You better keep the money flowing through, and that's another aspect of it. Yeah. So the adapting piece of freelancing is another part of it.
Yeah. I think that's like a misconception a lot of people have when they're younger, is like, okay, I'm going to work production, so if I get on a feature for 6 months, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go vacation for a few months. But really, you go into that mode of like, holy crap, nobody's calling me. So you find yourself not going on the vacation, but trying to dial for dollars and figure out where the next job's coming. Yeah. So it's You got to be comfortable with that, though. I personally was not. My risk level is, you got to figure out where that is, and I didn't.
And
the hours can be brutal, and
it evolves because now
you got to love it though.
Probably don't have families and all that stuff, and it will evolve.
Right.
You need wife, kids, spouse, husband, whatever you have. All those needs are going to change. Honey, we can't have you. Then the sidebar was. Lots of people had side jobs they never told you about when the dead times. They'd rehab houses, they'd do all kinds of things to fill in the dead times or just give themselves a break. But if they had spouse, kids, all that stuff, the money didn't cease to flow in.
Right.
And that happens even more now.
And the time, I know a lot of people that like to do commercial work because TV or features are so demanding and it takes them away from their kids.
Yeah.
So they're like, you know what, I'm not doing a TV show again because I just spent 9 months of,
You're in Albuquerque.
70 hours a week and didn't see my kids. So
Yeah.
it will evolve, you're right.
Yeah.
It does, and that flexibility you were talking about of, you can apply that to both the craft that you're doing and then your life because they affect each other and, you figure it out as you go.
Yeah, and there's nobody to direct.
And I still am figuring. I still haven't figured it out.
There's nobody to direct your career. You're in charge of it, and so you decide when you're a camera assistant. You decide when you're a cinematographer. You call yourself that. There's nobody that calls you up and says, "Okay, you're a cinematographer now."
Right.
And so you say, "You print out a business card. It says Dana Kupper, cinematographer." You're like, "Wow, really? Cool, right?" And you have to negotiate all your own jobs, right? So somebody calls you up, you want to shoot this. Well, now you got to learn how to ask all those questions and then negotiate all that stuff. And you know how you learn that is because you say, "Yeah, I'll come out and shoot your thing," and then you're an hour 15 and you're not getting any extra money, and you're like, "Okay, next time I'm going to do this differently."
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are hard lessons that
Right.
But you learn everything at lunch. You're sitting there at lunch with the various groups and you're like, "So, what have you guys been working on, and how do you guys do your taxes?" And and some guys are beefing about something, and somebody else is telling you something, and you're like, "Wow!" And you're making mental notes. Simple math here. Let's say whatever the job is, $400 a day for a grip. And there's always overtime, so it's $500 a day. "Hey, what have you been working on?" "Well, I just did 6 months on some show. 6 times. God, that guy made. But so it's all easy to figure out. There are formulas for everything. So start thinking, but you learn everything at lunch.
Yeah, there's a good point.
Yeah.
So here, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and there's the stuff we work on, the final product and all that, and then there's the process of it, and I always love the process, right? And so my question is there any time where you looked around and you thought, "Oh my gosh, I never thought I would be in this place or doing this, wow, look where I am." And, specifically for me, for instance, I would say like on an aircraft carrier, up in a helicopter, or, you know what I mean? And so has that happened to you guys?
Oh, yeah.
When is that moment for you? When was that kind of cool experience where you were like, "This is all right"?
I have one.
Yeah.
So when I was in college, I was like a huge Joe Swanberg fan, and I would go see his films at the Gene Siskel, with 2 other people, and we'd be one of 9 people there. And I would always ask questions and was really engaged. And I also when I started making films, I used him as a reference because he never had any money, and so when you're just making movies, you don't have any money. So then, fast forward a few years, I got to load film for a day on one of his features, and then I heard about the Netflix show, and I was like, "Okay, just need to get on this show, be a cush job, really fun." And I talked to the AD, and I get on as a PA for 2 weeks, and I was like, "Cool, okay, great." So the second day of the shoot, they're like, "We need a DIT," and I was like, "I can do that job." I was having an existential crisis as a PA because I'm like, "I hate doing this. Why am I here?" I remember I was going on a run for wardrobe to buy a man thong for a man to wear during a sex scene, and I had to use my own money because my friend who did wardrobe, her card bounced, and I was like, "This is not what I want to be doing." And I remember I was in her car and I got an email and they're like, "We're looking for a DIT," and I go up to the producer and I was like, "Yo, I would love to do this. Like, I went to school for this. Please, God, like, help me. And I remember he was like, all right, turn in your walkie. Like, we're going to go to the office. And I was like, oh, my God, yes. So, like, it was this, and I work on the show currently and, like, have, like, hung out with Joe, and he's, like, a mentor for me now. And it's just so funny to see how, like, to work, like, to, you know, when you're younger, you, like, kind of idolize people. You're like, wow, they're so great. And it's like, no, stop doing that, because, like, those people are, they can be, like, your peers and, like, in the same world as you. And now I just, like, support my friends' work because, like, those are the people I idolize, because those are the people who are going to be making, like, the stuff in the future. And, like, I don't know, just kind of funny how it worked out.
It's huge. I mean, all the
Yeah.
people, I mean, I went to film school, and a certain percentage of people I went to film school with, I'll never see again. And then there's another certain percentage where we all started here, and then now, all of a sudden, I look around, and, like, 2 of my friends are ASC, one guy owns an edit house, like, another guy works for Disney, he's got 2 Academy Awards. I mean, it's like, it's crazy how people I know have just come up in the business.
But
And of
how
course it makes
different all of those
sense,
are,
though.
too.
But it makes sense. It's like, who's going to run the business? It's going to be you in 20 years. You're going to turn around and you're going to look around and you're going to go, oh my God.
Yeah, it's cool though. Like,
Yeah.
you should feel, like, empowered when you're younger, because it's like, yeah, you might not be good at what you wouldn't be good at now, but, like, don't keep doing, like, don't stop doing it. I think that's something that I've come to terms with recently too, is, like, in high school I played, like, drums, and all my friends were, like, way better at it. And so I just stopped doing it, because I was like, well, I'm never gonna be great. And recently I, like, got a drum set again and was like, you know, those people, like, I enjoy doing it, so I'm gonna do it. Like, and it's fun for me. And the same is with anything creative, where it's like, don't get down on yourself by not being the best, or, like, your friend has a better job, or, like, they got a really cool opportunity, because it's like, I don't know, like, things will come around in that way. But
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be like the best at a particular job in your industry. You have to be top of mind for what people are looking for. So one of the ways you do that is to make sure you always follow up. I was at an industry event a couple of years ago, and sitting in front of me was a filmmaker named Rebecca Parrish. And so we, did formalities, exchanged cards, followed up. Next thing I knew, she was looking for a PA. On a corporate video job. On that set, it was her one-woman band, and I was like, hey, I can help you run the sound as well. So that's when she learned that I could do audio. And then years later, she was like, hey, I'm doing this feature film following some nuns around across several cities and states. Would you like to do sound on this? I have no money, but it'd be a cool experience. So I was like, yeah. And then one of the nuns decided to lead a pilgrimage to Rome. And, I basically got paid to go shoot this thing in Rome. And it was the time where Pope Francis got elected too. So we were like there in St. Peter's Square when the white smoke came out. And that was one of those moments. I was like, man, this is awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, so I don't think it happens enough, like follow up after meeting people. Like you go to these events, you collect a stack of cards, but so many times if I don't write them first, I don't hear anything. So yeah, it really helps.
Yeah, and you're not bothering people when you reach out.
No.
It's just an email, I mean, and people love to be taken out to lunch, especially freelancers, because they may be free that day or whatever. And, and I think a lot of people in this business have a lot to give. And so, you meet somebody cool and you seem to vibe with them or whatever, and you're like, can I take you out to lunch and pick your brain? And you never know where that's going to lead.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of that. How about you? Any moments where you're like, what? I like being, like, wow, this is amazing.
Well, I mean, I've taken a different path than the production path, but I would say just a recent one is coming back to Chicago. I mean, I went out to LA, and that was fine. I mean, worked at the mothership for 14 years out there, which was great, but I wanted to come back to Chicago for a lot of personal reasons, and LA's fine, and I recommend you go out there, check it out, check the business out there. You don't necessarily have to live out there these days. But I went into my boss's office, and I was like, I was all set to just quit, start over, go back to Chicago, do whatever. And then he's like, well, it's been busier in Chicago, and we haven't been there for a long time. And I was like, all right, let me put a business proposal together for you. And lo and behold, we opened up last August, and it's fabulous.
Sweet.
So I got, So that was a good moment for me, and I get back to being the city I love.
Mm-hmm.
So despite everybody going, oh, you're going to get shot. It's like,
You had to buy a winter coat
I
again.
love that. First we get rid of Capone, and now it's like, all right, everybody's going to get shot.
Just serpentine, you'll be fine.
Yeah. No, I shouldn't make fun of it. It's horrible, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, and these are people in LA, and I'm like, oh, there's no
yeah,
crime in
it's the
LA.
stereotype. It's the
Yeah.
stereotype.
But
I know you
you
got
gotta
something.
have some good
you got
ones.
something good. You've been somewhere that you've been like, no way.
I was trying to make notes. There are a whole bunch, but this sounds really stupid, but they were doing a very Brady wedding, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The Brady Bunch was huge when at least we were kids,
Yeah.
and it's still on, of course. Okay, so the Peter Brady is marrying some woman from Joliet, and I had never seen the show. I have no idea what the show is all about, and they call me and say, do Steadicam on this wedding, okay? And it's a nice place out in Joliet and all this stuff, and we shoot it, and it was all kinds of silly stuff going on, and the reception. Greg Brady has written a song for Peter Brady, what the guy's name is, and he comes out with a spotlight on, and he's going to sing the song to the new couple, and I'm shooting that. And I'm sitting there going, I watched this show as a kid, and now fast forward a couple of decades, and I'm never in my life sitting there eating Fruit Loops would I have ever thought that because that show was huge.
It was huge.
It was absolutely huge, and everybody in the world has seen the Brady Bunch. And I'm standing there shooting Greg Brady as he's singing this song he made, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just like surreal. And again, it wasn't the most famous guy in the world, but it was just funny.
But it was Greg Brady.
It was
Come on.
Greg Brady. It was Greg Brady. But
Well, one of those guys became a camera assistant. Was it Peter Brady?
The middle one.
Yeah, the
became a
middle
camera
one. I
assistant.
think that was Peter, right?
Yeah.
And so the story that I heard from him, which was really great, was he was filming a CEO of a big corporation, and he had those big time, those big time code slates. So he went to slate for the CEO. He knocked the sticks, and then he pulled the slate out, but he wasn't looking, and he pulled it so it sliced the guy's forehead.
oh
open.
my God.
I love that story.
There's no follow up. You're like, that's it.
There's a lesson there somewhere.
Always pay
believe
attention.
Yeah. Thank God for digital slates
So I always
now.
think of that story when I hear his name.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it could happen to him. So that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We all make these huge mistakes,
That's
But,
too funny.
On the heels of that, every one of us has been driving somewhere. You're like, I was in a shoot in Fort Wayne, and you're like, I know I was on a shoot here, and you can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
So it sounds really corny. Just take a diary book, and just every job is, Fort Wayne, Indiana, commercial or something, and put the date. Because at some point, that perspective, 15 years later, you'll like, wow, I did that, and you'll, at the Baha'i temple, you'll be at these crazy locations that you just forget about.
I've said this for a long time. It's like, I wish I had done that, because you know how pilots keep logbooks, and so do divers, deep sea divers.
Right.
So every dive they do, they log like who they were with and what happened, what they saw,
Yeah.
and they keep these wonderful logbooks. And I think, God, I should have done that on these
Yeah.
shoots, because I've been on so many different ones, and
And they fall into the dust of, oh yeah, an odd recollection, but
Yeah.
it would be really cool to just align, and it takes 2 seconds
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be fun to have.
All right, well, I think we're getting ready to ask questions. I think we're going to open to the audience if you guys have any questions, although I don't know why you would, because I think we've answered everything. So you might be able to come up with something. So the microphone is back here, and so just go ahead and line up, and we've already got our first person.
All right.
So, all right, what do you want to know?
Hey, Dana.
Hi.
My name is Sydney. I'm a graduate student. I'm focusing on directing. So you guys need a script supervisor or a camera operator? No, but seriously. So I'm focusing on directing. So I'm wondering if something a director did or said to you, or a way in which they worked with you that you really appreciated, and kind of go into that.
All right. I mean, it's a creative business, and so the communication, the creative dialogue between collaborators is really important. I think that's a great question. So how does that work for you guys? And everybody's bringing something different here. So how does that work, the dialogue between you and the director? Or how does a creative collaboration really, has it worked in the past for you?
For me, I feel like usually like the first thing I'll do with the director is like get coffee or like whatever, hang out with them if I don't already know them. But there's certain people that I feel like they become kind of like the people that you call. Like they become like your friends, but also people that you creatively trust. And that doesn't really happen that quickly, necessarily. I've directed a few things, and my friend Taylor Russ, who's, I don't know if you're familiar with like F&D Films, it's like a sketch thing in Chicago. But you find people that you enjoy working with, and it's not just necessarily like work. I mean, I feel like I hang out with them only when we're really working. But I think when you look at the final product and you remember kind of how you communicated with them, like in pre-production, that's kind of where everything clicks, and you're like, oh, like I got what I wanted. Or I watched something that I shot with the director, and the director was like, this is perfect, like this is what we talked about. And it's sort of those, because you don't really get a lot of validation because the process is so long, but if a director, like there's like those really small moments of like affirmation that kind of establish the relationship. And it really depends like who you're working with, but when you find those, then it's like, oh, we did work really well together. Like there was a connection there, like some sort of date or something. But.
I was guilty of it. I realized it not too long ago. You can trivialize anything. Oh, this is just a silly movie about somebody getting a haircut. And Jaws, apparently Spielberg was this young kid, his, I guess, first big film. Nobody believed in the story. He had to fight the wind, the weather, the boats, this older crew, and all the other junk that was going on. And he still made like the killer movie of all time. Think about how hard that guy had to work just to deliver a film. Mm-hmm. So the times that you want to have solidarity with the crew members, and they're going, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, this girl doesn't know it, and you're like, you gotta just go, no, give them an audience and buy in. If you're on the project, buy into the story. But when it's like a shot and they're saying, hey, do this and do this, and this is the moment the lady makes the decision she's gonna leave the spouse, okay? And you get it, because directors are about story. A lot of them don't care about as much, they aren't as strong in the camera department. So they want to get that you get why we're doing this, and well, it's the big moment. Could I push in, and would that help you? Oh, that'd be great, But the rule I've figured out is you can make your suggestion once, and you can't sell it. You go, hey, what if we pushed in? And there are 10 other ideas, and they don't go for yours. You can't try and sell it 10 more times. Mm-hmm. So that's my thought on directing.
I had an experience with a really great director named Kai Dickens. And one thing I really appreciate that she did was she paid attention to every person on set, and she would make it a point to go to them at some point during the day and say thank you for something that she noticed that they did. So there are so many times when you go on set where you don't even get to talk to the director, or your work goes unnoticed, but she pointed out something from everybody, and I thought that was really nice.
She's great.
Yeah.
Is that respect?
It is respect.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for coming to speak today. It's been really enlightening. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Yes, hello, and thanks for the enlightening conversation. I have a question about a woman code. Should there be one? Should women expect to be supported by other women in positions of authority on a set? You mentioned Anna DuVernay, and she said that she has gone out of her way to hire other women for the show she's doing for Oprah's network, Queen Sugar, I believe it is. So should there be a code? Should women support other women? Should women look out for other women in the industry?
Yes.
And should you
I say
expect
yes.
that?
I think that, like what I said earlier, I really don't, like, we can sit here and talk about, like, times where we felt small because of men, and, like, I don't like the idea of it calling, like, a woman code. It's like, no, like, hire good people, but also be mindful that, like, you should create a space where, first of all, things, like, terrible things never happen, but, like, as a woman, like, you mentioned this earlier, where you talked about that female grip. So Dana took a class to Cinespace, and a female grip worked with the students, and she noticed that the women students, the female students, were more open and connected more because, we're assuming that, because this grip was a female. So, like, that, if that doesn't show you, like, the importance of this, and I don't know
It
what
was
will.
more than that. It was that there weren't other men there to kind of
Okay, right.
push them aside. And they
Right.
didn't feel like, I felt like the other women didn't feel like they were on display or had to kind of, negotiate all that stuff.
Right.
And I could have been reading it wrong for God
No, but I
knows,
mean,
but
that's,
it was a
I've
great
felt
safe
that.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also, by creating that space, those students are learning more, they're feeling more comfortable, they're feeling more confident, and, like, it's not really about sexism, it's about just creating a space where, like, there's, like, people that look like you, or, like, like, you can feel comfortable talking to them or asking or being taught. So I think we have a huge responsibility to create those spaces behind the camera.
Thank you.
In the earliest days, women were mean to each other.
Yeah,
Just
it's
say,
true.
yeah, be careful with that too.
Yeah, they were
Yes, it's-
really mean to each other.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, I figured out recently, I think, it was kind of like, do you really deserve to be here? Because I worked really hard to get here.
Yeah.
And that we were not supportive of each other. And it's only in the last 10, 15 years, 10 years, let's say, that is completely flipped. And I will go on a limb, there's not a person here that wouldn't support anybody that showed up in front of them. I'm the script, I'm gaffer, go for it. So that's completely changed. But it was really odd, and I kept thinking, why are we so mad at each other?
Well, it's a fear. I mean, I think it was a fear of like, look, I made it here, and you're going to knock me down. There's only room for me, and I'm not going to let
It is kind of a
you.
competitive industry where
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
If
Very.
they're hiring from a few women and there's only 3 women, it is kind of competitive in that way of how you're, like, remembered. And
Plus, it's
and get
also like,
jobs.
you're representing women now, and so do you measure up to as good as I think you should be to be part of our little club or whatever? Yeah.
But now there's a union local women's, a 600 women's group, and somebody had a meeting the other day, and somebody said, hey, is there anybody that can babysit all the kids during this time? And I'm like, wow, I have gone to a completely another world. That never happened before. Yeah.
No. All right, another question?
Hi, I'm Casey.
Hi.
I was wondering if there was one aspect to each of your jobs that you could totally get rid of, what would that be?
If we could totally what?
Just get rid of one aspect of your job or one little quirk or detail.
That's easy. It's the middle, because I like to get called for work because it's really flattering, and I like the check at the end. That middle part is really hard. So yeah, the middle.
Got it.
that's brilliant.
How about you, Shuling?
Like what's not necessary or what I don't like to do.
Yeah, like what you don't like to do.
I don't like negotiating.
Yeah.
That's always hard. Yeah.
I feel like I've had to do a lot of, like, time card paperwork recently. Really don't like it. I don't like having, and then you're responsible for a bunch of union people's checks. And then the first day, the time card is like how people get paid. It's like, when you worked, where you worked, all that. And my position on set right now is to also do that. And then the other day, the first AC was like, "Can you forward me all the ones that you've made? I just want to double check something." And I'm like, yeah. I'm just like, I hope you got paid what you, I don't know. It's just kind of a responsibility, and I also work overnight, so I'm like filling them out at 4 a.m. Like, really hope that this is then, like 10 people's things, and I'm just having like some crazy montage sequence. But like, yeah, paperwork sucks, but I'm not in film to do paperwork, so, but you gotta do it sometimes.
Part of the job.
Yeah.
Yep.
How about you, Sharon?
For me?
Yeah.
No, I can't think of any one thing. Every day something new comes up where I'm like, why do I got to do that? But you do it. I mean, I think that's part of it too. Is there's no role is going to be perfect, and you're just going to have to suck it up and go, okay, I gotta do that crap along with this so I can get to where I want to be. But yeah, I don't know. You know, it's funny because you say negotiating the deal. I think it is something that, and I'm not, you know, it's something I think that's, I don't want to say harder for women sometimes, but it seems like given just the culture and whatnot, that I've seen that a lot, where I see women take jobs for less money for, you know, and we've all had to fight that. I mean, I've had to fight that even on my end of the business of like, wait a minute, you know, so learn how to negotiate and feel comfortable with it and practice it. I mean, practice it with other people that you trust to give you feedback, because especially as a freelancer, you know, somebody mentioned it earlier of taking, you know, those crap jobs where they're going to pay you, you know, oh, we'll you know, give you $20, you know, $75 or whatever it is. But when you start looking at, I'm self-employed, so I'm paying all my taxes, my Social Security, I'm paying everything else because there's no way around it. So you got to do it. Don't get yourself stuck in something. But make it, you know, you have value. You have value to what you do. And so push back a little, you know, and then you know, if it's something that you're passionate about, to do it because it's a great story, or it's, you know, a friend you're helping out, that's one thing. But it's somebody calling you and trying to beat you up on price. I mean, we get that all the time on the equipment side. And it's like, we hold our line because, you know, Panavision provides a service and a level of equipment that I'm not going to give it away, because it not only costs us money to make high-end equipment and technicians that can, you know, be highly skilled to take care of that. There's a value to that. There's a value to the job you do when you start getting more experience in the position that you're in. Value that. Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
I think there's two rites of passage in this business. The first one is turning down a job that you could have done, that you're available, but it just, the rate or whatever it is just doesn't work for you. And you say, no, thank you. And that's a huge step as a freelancer.
It is.
And then the second one is getting fired.
Getting fired. You got to get fired.
That's when you really know. That's when you're like, check the box. I'm in the business now.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, if you're getting fired, it's either you spoke up about something, maybe you screwed up, and you know what, take it and learn. And that's what getting fired, that's the rite of passage in this business. If you get fired for that, take ownership of whatever it was. But if it was you were standing your ground for whatever reason and you get fired, it's like, well, good for me.
It's not the end of the road for you, for sure. It's just that next step.
Yeah.
Especially over a safety issue.
Absolutely.
You know, if there's ever a moment where you're like, why am I doing this? You know, and nobody else will back you up.
Yeah.
You know, never be on your last nickel that you can't afford to walk away, because everybody makes bad choices when you're on your last nickel. Like, I really need this $400 because I got to pay the rent. If you're on, you will do dumber things.
Yeah.
But, you know, at some point, you have to trust the instinct of, I stopped doing helicopter stuff.
Yeah.
One friend has had multiple people be killed in helicopters. And just, we stopped doing it. And I would get an occasional phone call, and no, I really kind of don't want to do those.
Yeah.
And I'd pass it off, and I'd hang up the phone and be so happy.
Yeah.
Like, this is great.
Yeah.
I gave it to somebody, and years later, I ran into this guy. He's like, I did that helicopter thing a long time ago. It was terrible. I was like, yes, I'm so glad I did it. But yeah, sometimes it just is the wrong vibe. And I don't know if you guys do this. This is my worry for folks, is there are Craigslist jobs, and you don't know whether they're legit, not legit. Everybody, well, I have my phone with me. Your phone can be thrown away. Be really careful of Craigslist jobs. They are not necessarily on the up and up, and I certainly wouldn't go by yourself. And I do the old per family, per family, and I put it in the subject line. I put per family policy, and I put the person I'm going to, I put their name, I put 3 or 4 other people, and I put in the body of it, I am going to this shoot on the 12th. I am leaving at 6 a.m. and I will expect to be back at 5 p.m.
Wow.
And
You're scaring me.
well,
No,
it's
it's
true.
true though. You
I've
gotta
never
be
done
careful.
that. And you put everything
Oh
you
my
know about.
God.
Here's this person's name, phone number, email, whatever, and you send it to everybody.
Yeah.
And at least somebody knows where you
Right.
might be,
Right.
and it no harm, no foul. They just throw it away.
Yeah.
There's no issue.
Yeah.
But at least you have some trail of where you're going on all these jobs that are out there nowadays.
It's true.
You know,
It is.
I had one young lady who was doing some, it's going to be out and it's in the middle, and it was in a bizarre area alone. She had no idea who this person was. She was kind of going by herself.
Yeah.
And I could see 5 bad opportunities there, and I was like, just make sure you tell somebody, take somebody, whatever. It's stuff that, you'd never think of.
Well, if you know anything about me, you know I have a bunch of little sayings, and so this keys into one of my sayings, which is, I've never regretted a job I've turned down. I've only regretted jobs I've taken. So I get on these jobs, and I'm like, damn it, I did it to myself again.
Yeah. That's how we learn.
That's how we learn.
The thing for me is long hours. You know, I hear these stories of lots of friends who are working on TV shows. It's called Fraturday.
Yeah.
They work Friday late because they're already into overtime and all the turnaround times. They work Friday late all the way into Saturday morning, and then they got a call on Monday.
Like
and they're
6
already
a.m. call
into,
on Monday.
40 hours by the time they start Friday. So they're into 50, 60-hour weeks. And there's going to be some bad story of somebody falling asleep at the wheel that we have already heard. But that's the bad trend of the world now, are the long hours. But the solving the problem is procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you can do ahead, it sounds really basic. I do everything ahead, and if I do the work, I've pushed it off to somebody else. Now my plate is empty. It's like answering emails as they come in, all that stuff. But that's the solve the problem factor in all this. So anyway, that's part of an answer anyway.
Hey, my name is Serena. I'm concentrating in documentary production, but I also do a lot of activist/organizing work. So I see you with that Asada's Daughters. I was just wondering if some of y'all could talk about a time where your politics or your ethics were compromised, and kind of a moment where you really couldn't sit back and just let it happen.
I missed the last part of the question. What was the last part of the question she said?
So when you when you felt like you couldn't let it go, that you had to take action, where you were, something came, you were on a shoot or you were asked to work on something and you were like, I don't feel right about this. This is not right. I mean, I have one. We had one where we were filming a kid who had epilepsy, and it was this terrible medical show that was in the guise of entertainment. No, not in entertainment. I mean in education or something, but it was really just entertainment. And they had wired this kid's brain, and then they were hoping that he would have a seizure on camera because they were going to map where the electricity was, because they were going to cut out part of his brain, right? So, and I'm thinking, well, I don't think this kid wants to have a seizure on camera. Can you imagine if you were like 9 years old and all your friends see you have a seizure? I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. And then what happened is we started to run into overtime because he wasn't having the seizure, and then the producer was like, is there a way to induce a seizure? Because we're in overtime for the crew. And I was like, oh my God. So I didn't work on that show anymore because I thought, oh my God, this is horrible.
Where was his parents?
Huh?
Where were his parents?
Well, his parents signed along with it because they sold them on the idea that this is a good show because other
awful.
kids, other families that have kids that have epilepsy and seizures could see this show and then see that there was a treatment for it. And so this is an important show to, but no,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. I know an assistant that turned down a commercial for fur. There was some furrier thing, and the assistant went, I really don't want to work on that because I don't want to promote fur, killing the animals.
Yeah.
Lots of times ahead of time, but I have to say I'm fairly low on the totem pole, and that's a tough one. And one person a sound guy was doing a job, and this kid wasn't doing what they wanted, and he kind of rapped this kid on the head, and it was I have to say acceptable in whatever culture this was.
Oh.
But the sound guy just turned to him and said, "If you do that again, I'm going to deck you." It's like, and he came to the kid's defense, and the guy never did it again. But commercials, I knew somebody that was shooting a commercial for a product that was in, I think, a Spanish language, and they, I guess the water temperature at the time was not as hot when it was hot. Around here, it was a certain temperature, and the product worked better, okay? And they were shooting, and they had the before and after, and it wasn't as clean, okay? And they somehow, somebody went, well, why don't we just like overexpose it a little bit to make it look a little cleaner? It's like infomercials or something. And they were kind of joking about it, but I'm like, God, that's really an odd compromise moment. Are we, to make it look, A and B look the same, they had to crank open the exposure a little more to make B look just as good. But it was a different criteria, and they kind of laughed about it. But I was like, wow, that is an ethical situation. And they went, hey, we're the camera department. We showed the product as best we can, and we'll let the rest of the work, let somebody higher than us make those decisions. I don't know if that's good or bad.
All right, well, I think my ethical decision right now is that we're done. I'm sorry. I wish we could continue. I think this was awesome. So let's give our panel a round of applause because they're awesome.
Thanks.